Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I'm your host, Jared Carroll, and here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out my last episode recorded, which was episode 202 with Quan Rabbit. Came on the podcast, talked about his family dynamic, what it was like growing up in the foster care system, becoming a rapper, and some of the stuff that influences a lot of his music. Very powerful episode. Check that out, thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you'd like to watch your podcast, go to YouTube, search The Carroll Connection, or at Jared M. Carroll, and it should pop up for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at The Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. As well as I've been promoting all of 2024, and I will continue to promote into all of 2025. My book, The 5 Pillars to Create a Meaningful Life, get it on Amazon. I have the links in my bio. And read it, write a review, submit it on Amazon. I really appreciate that. Only get that on Amazon. This is the 2024 year in review episode, and I also want to explain a little bit of why I haven't dropped any episodes for probably about, I think it's almost like a month and a half, if not 2 months almost. I had guests scheduled from around Thanksgiving through December. Unfortunately, and this has never happened ever on the show in the last 5 years, I had almost pretty much every single one have to reschedule for different reasons. And at the same time, I was kind of okay with it. As you guys know, I just mentioned I hit 5 years of doing the podcast. I wrote the book, and I haven't really taken like a holiday break probably since like 2020, 2021. So I've been really kind of recharging, collecting my thoughts, trying to think of stuff I want to do creatively, still trying to figure that out. And I'll probably brainstorm on this episode a little bit. But I have guests lined up for 2025. I plan on continue recording episodes for as long as I can, and I will continue to bring you guys the best possible content I can. And to do that, I'm kicking off 2025 with none other than Manders Mindset for episode 203. How you doing, man? Had really excited. Oh, I almost didn't even turn your volume up right there, so I apologize for that.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Really excited, and we have lots of stuff to get into. You last appeared on this podcast for episode 153, and that was a while ago. Like we're talking probably over a year at this point. Yeah, over a year. And at that time, we were just talking about this prior in the pre-show of you had just launched the podcast. You were just getting really into the breathwork stuff, and you were, I think on that episode, I don't know if I'm confusing that episode and the time I was on your podcast about you working in the legal field, correct? And like not loving it. And I remember specifically you talking about the boss that you had, and he had to drink the Fireball nips or something like that. And I don't know why that's coming to my mind right now, but like that specifically is coming to my mind. And we obviously talked on ayahuasca on that episode and some other stuff, but I'm really excited to catch up with you as well as talk about how 2024 went for you. But let's start with just focusing on what's been going on since that last episode where you came on for 153.
Well, to begin, well, ironically enough, I got laid off about a week later after that episode from the law office I was at the time. I thought it was awful in the moment, and it turned out to not be as awful as I thought. A lot transpired from that. Obviously, I was out of work for a little bit of time. Started getting more into podcasting. Started doing more breathwork even when I had all the time. Was out of work for a couple months. Got a different job at a different law office. Received an opportunity to go to Bali, so I quit the job. I went to Bali for about 10 days. Loved that. Changed my life. Yeah, I came back from Bali, traveled a lot this past year. I went to Washington, D.C., Maryland. I went to Podcast Movement. Went to Florida, attended PodFest. Went to Florida a few different times. And just all of these little things have just been working out in random little ways. Like Podfest. I won a ticket through Buzzsprout. And then when I won the ticket, it was like right before Christmas last year. And my mom hadn't gotten me a Christmas present. She's like, want me to buy you a hotel for a Christmas present? And just all these little things worked out. When I went to Bali, a friend of mine was supposed to be attending this retreat, and last minute she found out she couldn't go, and she's like, Manders, you should go. I'm like, what do you mean I should go? It's in 4 days. Like, she told me about this retreat, and I'm like, I have a job that I work Monday through Friday, and you're giving, it was like, maybe it was more than 4 days notice, but it was like a week's notice. And the job was like, and I was like, well, I'm out. Thanks. This was great, but today's my last day. They're like, you're going to stay till 5? I was like, I will. I stayed till 5, and I went to Bali 2 days later. It's amazing. I loved it. Yeah.
Let's start with because I'm interested to talk about the whole Bali experience.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the Podfest stuff. Like
Okay.
how was that experience? Because I've definitely seen stuff. I'm in Facebook groups. I've seen people post about different podcast events. But what was it like actually experiencing one?
It was huge, first of all. Like, I had no clue like what to expect. I'm one of those people that I don't always research these events. I'm just gonna go. You're gonna give me a ticket, I'll book the flight, I'm gonna go. So I didn't know what to expect. Joined this Facebook group, I started introducing myself, but there were like thousands of people there. So I met so many people, and majority of them were so friendly and so welcoming. There was even this, I was using a Yeti mic at the time, and there was this random guy that came up to me that had become my Facebook friend from meeting me in the Facebook group, and he was like, how do you take criticism? And I was like, what does that mean? And he's like, I've got something I want to say to you about what you're doing, but I've never met you, and I don't know if this is an insult. And I was like, please tell me. Please tell me. And he's like, the way you have this Yeti mic, you're probably having more of an echo. And I said, I have been trying to use all of these different editing softwares, and everyone has been telling me it's just my crappy mic, which when I straightened the mic, it gave me less of an issue. Now I have a new mic, but it's like so many different random little things. Everybody is so willing to help. So even outside of like the actual education sessions, people are coming up to you and it's like, "Hey, I saw you posted a clip on Facebook." That's how he knew the way I had my mic, and I was like, "Thank you." He's like, "Some people would take that the wrong way." I'm like, "No, I so appreciate it." I met one guy and we connected really well because I loved his purple shirt, and I was like, I want one of those. And he's like, okay, you can buy them here. I bought one. But he was like, if you could achieve any one thing at this event, what would it be? And he's like, and I'm gonna help you achieve it. And they were just all so like willing to help. And I was like, I was blown away because they're strangers to me. I don't know these people from a hole in the wall. Just because they host a podcast and now you're my Facebook friend, I've never met you. I've never spoken to you, even virtually. You know what I mean? So it's not like we have any type of connection. So I was really amazed at that.
What was the biggest maybe takeaway that you learned, I guess, from Podfest? Because I'm interested to know if there's like something that like obviously besides like the actual experience of like meeting people and networking and stuff because there's value in that, but like the actual maybe something that they taught you or someone taught you specifically besides obviously the Yeti mic. We've all been there. I've had them and echoing and trying to cover it up with software. It's just part of the podcast experience. But what was like some one of the bigger takeaways that you had from that experience?
I'd say it's probably even these little different gems that people say. One of them was I attended this one speech, and a lot of times it's these one or two gems that you hear, even like in a podcast, that like really stand out to you. And these two brothers were going on. They have a podcast. They've been doing it. It's a long time, and they monetize it. This is their full time business. And he was saying, everybody wants to implement this and change this and all these different things you can do because it's overwhelming. There's so many different tracks and you got to figure out what you want to attend. Some things are happening at the same times, and he's like, figure out, and honestly I've implemented this in my life, but figure out what area in the podcast or in whatever is causing you the most friction and work on that. and work on eliminating that. Because there's hundreds of things you can do. You can add this, you can change this, but what is causing you the most friction? What is giving you the most issue, causing you the most stress? Because if you reduce it, even if you don't eliminate it, it's going to help you in the long run. And I started thinking about that, like in anything I would approach. How can I remove the most friction from this? How can I make this as simple as possible for myself? Like whatever that may be. Maybe it's asking for help if I don't know how to do something. Because like I'm not necessarily understanding it, watching a video. Whatever that may be, how can you remove the most friction? And it's like maybe it's even communicating with somebody about if you have an issue with this, but whatever it is, and I really started embracing that. And another gem I really heard was from Alex Sanfilippo, and I loved this because there you see a lot of pod fade in podcasting. Like, how long are people doing it? Are they sticking with it? We talked about this a little bit off air, and something he said to me, which because he was like, some of the stuff I was doing in 2023 with podcasting, I was up at like all hours of the night editing all this crazy stuff, and he's like, Manders, if what you're doing right now, if you can do it in 5 years' time, you're good. But if you can't maintain consistency with this in 5 years, 4 or 5 years, what are you doing? And I was like, huh, okay. And it's not necessarily, it's like just these little gems that, like, I'm one of those people that, like, you say something to me and I will remember it for the rest of my life. I'll remember it past when you're gone. Like, I'm just one of those people.
That's actually really great, like, insight, especially obviously people don't know the pre-show that we're talking about, and obviously I was telling you about some of the, I guess, hurdles that I'm trying to overcome right now after taking my little bit of hiatus and um trying to I hit the 5-year mark and 200 episodes and wrote the book and trying to figure out those next steps in it. And that honestly really resonates with me as thinking about how I've been able to sustain the podcast as long as I have is having a moderately easy like editing schedule. Like it takes a lot of time to do it because like obviously we do an hour podcast. You have to it's going to take at least an hour to edit it by watching it. You have to watch the podcast and then to find your clips, to edit the sound. And now that I have multiple angles, switching between the angles from when you're talking to when I'm talking and going through that process, slowing it down takes additional time to do that. And that's a lot of time out of my weekend. And I have a 9 to 5 job. I work and I do all that stuff. I have a relationship that I really care about. And I have family. I have friends that I want to like maintain and having that balance. And like, I don't get paid from this. So it's like trying to find where those things align. But hearing that piece of advice validates kind of, in my opinion, the way that I've been doing things because I don't go over the top with my editing. Anyone who's ever watched my podcast knows I don't go crazy about um, how this camera angle is or trying to get it centered up with the camera. Like I might be a little bit off centered. Oh well, like it is what it is. Like I'm not a professional podcast. Like I'm not making millions of dollars. Like I don't care about that stuff. Essentially, it's about the conversation that we're having and talking and connecting. And that's why I was really excited to get you in today, especially for the 2024 year in review based on all the stuff that you've been going through, and we'll get to the Bali stuff as well. But it's just getting a chance to sit down with another podcaster, and obviously, I got the privilege to interview you pretty early on in your podcasting career, and to see you have grown since then and taking those steps and seeing when you're going to like Podfest and all these different things like it's exciting for me to see because I'm like, you're really actually like doing the thing though. Like you're going and chasing like the podcasting dream and learning from all these different people. And I think that's just like a really cool thing because not everyone's willing to like actually put the money where their mouth is and like go into these events and like actually take time to listen to people talk about podcasting because it takes actual effort. And we were kind of even talking about that a little bit off air of like almost like people's unwillingness to like actually apply themselves and this flows into not to like force this in but like just starting and this like reminds me of that concept of like when I'm thinking about this book to anyone that's listened to my birthday reflection that I just dropped in November. I was talking about how I created the book and you brought up the concept of just starting on one of your quick takes basically and that really resonates with me because I would do 30 minutes a day with writing that book. 30 minutes a day. Have to do 30 minutes a day. Slow and steady, slow and steady. And you can even apply that to like doing a podcast a week. Simple podcast a week, 1 hour. That's it. Do your editing. Post. I do like 4 times a week. I remember you had asked me once about like trying to do like a posting schedule and trying to figure out a way that works best for you. And for me, it was always doing that specific like routine. Do a post. I used to just do a picture and then I did a quote and then I got more cameras and started doing the reels and stuff. But just starting and then the consistency aspect of maintaining the thing is super important. And I thought that point from Podfest actually really resonated with what I was saying. So I thought that was super interesting. Um, to build off that, I would like to dive into a little bit of the Bali stuff now, though.
Okay.
Tell me, or tell me and the audience, kind of why Bali? Like where? Like it's such a like. And we were joking about like your experience before off podcast, but like it's such a beautiful place. But just like how does that come to be?
So, timing is very synchronistic too. I actually, and I didn't even remember I did this now, but I found this letter literally this morning. January 11th, last 2024, technically, so this year still, I wrote myself a letter. One of my breathwork friends, she also got certified in breathwork, sent me this video on Instagram. Some random woman, it's not even on Instagram anymore, but some woman was posting about a video about writing down 11 things to the universe that you want, that you are calling in, that you are manifesting on January 11th, 111. And then on the backside of this, 11 things you are willing to do to have this, willing to release to get it, whatever that may be. Now, this same woman, Meg Moso, she was hosting her first ever retreat in Bali. It was this goddess retreat, and I was like, I have to go to this. I call myself the breathing goddess, and I just felt I had never even heard of Bali before. I didn't even know where the hell it was, but I was like, I have to go to this. And she was like, this is what the deposit is, whatever. Now, I was unemployed at the time. I'm like, how the hell am I going to make this happen? Then she sends me this video, and I was like, I am writing this down. And my second thing on there was that I went to Bali on the goddess retreat with my breathwork ladies, and I did. Fast forward, I didn't make it work necessarily right in January. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was still unemployed. I started working at a law office, I believe it was March, and it was okay. I didn't love it. Not necessarily just the law itself, but just some of the way they handled stuff. Like they were very unorganized. I was getting calls from people about bills that weren't paid. I was like, this is not me. Like this is not paralegal Russo. Like I am very organized. I'm the planner, as we were even talking about. I'm like, this is not cool. And I was like, can I like come up with a system for this? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. And then I was literally talking to the universe. I was like, I need to go. Fast forward a little bit, a different friend of mine, Megan Escobar, who's also got certified in breathwork and introduced me to breathwork, sent me a message and was like, I'm not able to go on this retreat. All you have to do is pay for the flight. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, I'm gifting this. I'm like, you're gifting this to who? She goes, you, if you can go. And I was like, okay, I shouldn't be looking at my phone while I'm at work. And now I'm just sitting here like, what the hell am I going to do? Now I'm Googling flights and I'm like, I need to go to Bali. This is in like, it was very recent. It was maybe 7 days, 10 days later that I would need to leave to be able to make this work because it's also a really long flight. And I spent a few days like calculating and figuring things out. And I was like, I have to do this. And for the longest time, I was like, no, this is too crazy. I've only left the country once in my life. When I was in high school, and I went with my whole family to Jamaica. So, like, now I'm just going to go to Bali by myself. Like, I technically have a passport, but what? So I'm like, I'm not doing this. And then I get in my head, you know what? It's too crazy. It's too last minute. It's fine. Then I recorded a podcast episode with my friend Brett, who also got certified in breathwork, NFL player, Brett Lockett. And he asked me a question, and I was like, I have to fucking go to Bali. He was like, we were talking about like meaningful life. And I was like, yeah, it's important to get curious. He's like, no, it's deeper than that. And I was like, okay. He's like, what is going to make you at the end of your life, or even if it's not the end of your life, when you're much older, look back and be so glad that you had such a meaningful life and you were so glad you did these things or you did this, you went here, you had this experience. And I was like, I hate this job. They won't let me fix things. The the pay's okay, but it's less than the last place. And I'm just have all these different things that I'm like, what am I doing? I drive 50 minutes to get to work. I hate my drive to work. And I'm just like, I'm going to Bali. And I didn't even really give myself the option for them to be like, let's have a discussion. I booked the flight and I was like, I'm leaving for Bali for 10 days. They're like, you've been here for not even a full 2 months. I was like, I'm leaving for 10 days. So then I quit. I quit. I went to Bali and I loved it. It was,
How did they take that? Like, was there any negotiation on their part? Did they try to persuade you to stay? Like, did they even care to try to persuade you, or did it just say, "All right, yeah, whatever"?
well, so the first thing they were like, you're not going to Bali. And my sass was like, you're not going to Bali. I'm going to Bali.
Did you say that?
Yes. And the attorney was like, when do you leave for Bali? And I was like, I don't remember the date. I think it was the 2nd of May or the 4th of May. I was like, May, whatever it was. And he was like, how long are you gone for? And I told him how long I was gone for. And I was like, I think this is probably best if we just part ways here. And he was like, okay. I put my key on the desk and that was that. I finished the day and we called it quits.
That's insane. But
Yeah,
like,
it was.
but like, when you have this feeling that you're supposed to do something, you almost have to trust that intuition that you're having, especially regarding the breath work. This is something that, I mean, you joked about the breath work goddess, like it's the Instagram thing. It's like, this is what you're trying to work towards. This is something you're passionate about. How many more opportunities are you going to get for something random like this to just pop up and you have the chance to do something?
I
Like,
know.
you have to kind of go for it and take that risk and take that chance to actually do something. And that pulls on to like the quote that I have from my grandfather of just taking the chance. I even put that in like the front page of the book of like the dedication is to just take the chance. Like, and hearing the question that your friend Brett kind of pitched to you, like, I mean, even just jokingly just pulls off the title of the book right here. It just gets me thinking of like
Yeah.
how to create the meaningful life and like thinking about the things that really do influence meaning in one's life. And when you really think about that question, I feel like it's a hard question to answer, but it's also kind of easy at the same time. Like when you break it down to like the really basics of the things that make you happy as a person, like we all look and value for connection, or we want love in our lives, want to be with our families if we have that, or friends. There's certain things that we want in our lives, and being able to nurture those things and work on those helps create meaning. And something like this for you with Bali and experiencing what that culture is like and trying to learn some different things. Like this was a huge step in the right direction for defining you as a person. And where you're going and creating your career, this adds a layer to it that makes you, to pull from our good friend Wally, undeniable, where you're building this resume towards something that's really unique and special. And when I think about this book, in terms of my life, in terms of just 2024, a little bit kind of gearing us, because obviously your Bali trip was in 2024, kind of talking about 2024 here. The addition of being an author, that was something that was so huge to me. And I know that I told you a little bit about my secret project when I was on your show and stuff like that. And even off air, we are kind of just talking about it. And you were like super excited for me at the time. And I really appreciate that because that adds to like the motivation that helped create the book. But to be able to be an author, to have the book out on Amazon, to see it there. As someone who's a podcaster, you probably felt very similar when you get to see it on Apple or on Spotify, and you get to see people sharing it to their story that they're listening to your podcast. Like that feeling is euphoric. It's something that not everyone gets to experience. Maybe people who make music might be in a similar boat to understand that kind of feeling. But I remember just thinking and thinking and thinking about what it would be like to see my book on Amazon. Like visualizing it, like actually visualizing, Googling my name or Googling the title of the book and seeing it out there. And I remember to this day, like with the way that I release on self-publishing, it publishes once it's approved, it's published. Like I couldn't like set like a date to do it because you have to have certain copyrights to do that. And it's a little bit different. Second book I'll probably do it that way. But with this, as soon as the book dropped, I got the email. I went to Amazon right away. I bought the book on Amazon. Like, I didn't even wait to get. I can get a discount and do author books and stuff. It's the same book, but it's just cheaper. I was the first person to buy my book, and I remember taking a screenshot off Amazon. I still have the screenshot on my phone. Like I was like, just in case it somehow gets deleted, I lose the book somehow. I want physical proof, a screenshot at least, that my book was on Amazon, and it's just the coolest thing. Every once in a while, I'll go and just like search my book on Amazon just to like look at it. It's like that such rewarding feeling. It all started with taking a chance, taking a risk, and defining what creates meaning in our life. And that goes back to kind of the stuff that you're talking about with the conversations you had in your podcast, and even going to Bali. So, not to like cut you off, but like I want to go back into the Bali experience and kind of talk me through quitting the job and then preparing to leave to go to Bali.
So it was a whirlwind because now it was a very short period of time. Now, mind you, I quit the job on, I think it was a Thursday, and I left for Bali the following Monday. By this Thursday, my mom did not even know I was leaving the country on Monday. So I was like, okay, I'm going to drive home to Western Mass. She lives about 2 hours from me. I'm going to tell her in person before I'm just like, call her and be like, I'm leaving the country for 10 days. I was like, I'm going to tell her. So I, I was like, I tried to break it to her easily. And I was like, I'm going on a retreat next week. And she goes, did you get time off of work for that? And I was like, I quit the job. And she goes, where is the retreat? And I was like, in Bali. She goes, I've never heard of Bali. Is that far? And I was like, it's in Indonesia. She goes, that's not the United States. No, no, that is another country. Um, so she was very nervous because I had done traveling this year, but you talk a different country. That's a whole nother passport, visa, and I knew nothing. I knew nothing. Um, my mom did more research on Bali than I did, but it was then starting to like navigate, okay, how am I going to get to the airport? Now I'm also not telling a lot of people because I'm like, people are going to think I'm crazy. I just quit my job. I'm just going to not tell anyone. I'm just going to get on a plane to Bali and do my thing. So I had a friend of mine from the gym that I'm not even crazy close with. I was like, hey, I need a ride to Boston. Any chance you can bring me to Boston on Monday? He's like, where in Boston? I'm like, the airport. Like, sure. I had a different friend of mine from the gym pick me up from there because, again, I was like, I'm not telling people. This sounds insane. I'm just going to go. Didn't tell anybody in my family other than my mom that I was leaving the country, and I left the country. Yeah, so I kind of just went off like the face of the earth for a little bit. Was not posting on Facebook. My Instagram story, I was a little bit because I was like, this is going to worry my family. Everybody's going to think I'm insane. My mom is scared shitless. We're just going to go. I was told like close friends and we're going to figure it out. But it was good. When it came time for the flight, long flight, I think it was 3 flights and they were very long. The shortest one was an 8-hour flight. And the first flight I was on, I got like the whole row to myself. I slept the whole time. I was chilling. Now, fast forward a little bit. Once I, again, did no research, so I don't know. When I booked my flight, there was some option for like some phone internet plan. So I'm like, okay, I'll use my phone there. Amanda, that's not necessarily what that means. So I don't know what I did or what I had connected, but once I was not in the United States, my phone wasn't working and it had a different time than the time that it actually was. So it was, I don't know how I even made the next flight that I did. I had to talk to so many people. It was a hot mess. And I was such a clusterfuck, honestly, getting on that next flight. And then I was like, I better have the seat to myself. I just want to sleep. I'm so mad. I'm confused. I don't even know what's happening. Didn't have the seat to myself. But I actually met this man. His name was Motion, and it was so wild because he could tell that I was like so flustered, and he starts talking to me, and he's talking to me about this thing that I can't remember who introduced him to it, and he's explaining that I'm not going to understand this, and I'm like, what the hell is this man talking about? Then he's telling me to close my eyes, and he almost leads me through like a mini breath work, but he doesn't call it breath work. And I was like, do you realize I'm the breathing goddess? And he was like, what does that mean? And I was like, I am certified in breath work. And he's like, what is breath work? And I was like, we just did breath work. And it was wild to me. Like, it was kind of like a different version, but basically like a breath work type technique to help calm my nervous system. And I was like, I didn't meet this man like for accident at all. And he helped me get the visa. He showed me where to go. He helped me get to the next flight. He didn't like the next destination was his destination. He didn't leave the airport till I was on my next flight. So like I was set up and I was good and made it to Bali. Then I first got there. I think it was a day or two before the retreat started. And I was at a different resort than the actual resort of the retreat, and those days were intense. Those were the days I got lost the first day because I wasn't under the impression that if I left this resort, I'm not going to just be able to find my way and walk back. I was not. I was like, I'll recognize things. I took pictures of things. It did not matter. It took me about 2.5 hours to get back when I got lost. I tried asking different people, and now a lot of people didn't speak English. And then, of course, they're like, oh, well, where are you going? Well, I'm trying to explain the name of this hotel, this resort, but I'm not saying it in a way that they understand what I'm saying. It was a clusterfuck. That was then eventually when there was some guy on this Gojek scooter that, like, of course, they're all driving around. Can we give you a ride? I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. Then they drive off. And well, one guy, I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. He's like, what's the name of the place? So he gives me his phone to enter the resort into. Okay, he's going to take me there. Mind you, I did not come fully prepared. That same Motion guy was like, you need cash. I don't need that much Indonesian cash. I got my debit card. I've got United States cash. I'm fine. I got some Indonesian cash, but not enough. I had used most of it. Now this guy brings me back to the resort, and he's saying something. I don't even know what he's saying. He wants money from me. I don't have money to give him. I'm like, can I Venmo you? Can I Apple Pay? He don't have that. He's like, let's go. And I'm like, where are we going? And he's just ushering me back onto this Gojek. And I'm like, where are we going? He's like, I'll take you to the ATM. He takes me to this ATM, and he tells me it was like 100,000 like rupees or whatever he told me to get in there. I go inside, I get this money, I get back on the Gojek, we drive back there, he sticks out his hand, I handed him the money, and it was awkward. It was very uncomfortable, and it was weird because even when he first tried getting money from me, I was like, I'm just gonna walk away. I'm just gonna walk to like my resort. Well, he was following me, and then I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go to the ATM with this guy because I don't want him to see where I'm staying. It was a yeah.
Actual nightmare. Yeah, that's basically got robbed.
Sure.
Robbed in the nicest way. Like, not gunpoint, just said, let's go. And you're like, yeah, okay, I'm going to get on this bike with this guy and we're going to give you more money. But also logical, though, because if he is following you, you don't want to show him where you're staying.
I'm
like,
also a small female in another country.
Yeah.
And at this point, I hadn't met up with the retreat. So I'm like, no one knows. This guy could murder me in this alley and nobody's going to even know.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't met up with the retreat yet. Not that that would have made, but somebody be looking for me, you know? So my mind's like, man, just get on the Gojek. We're just going to give him this money. I don't even know what I gave him for money, but here you go. He's like, you left your water. Keep it. Because he gave me his phone number, and he's like, takes my phone and gives me, and then he texts himself on WhatsApp. I'm like, I am ready to leave. I am ready to leave. But it got much better. It got much better.
I mean, I don't think it would take much to get much better than
Damn it!
that's a light. Probably getting a sandwich would be much better than that experience. That's actually terrifying, low key. Just get on the bike. We're gonna go to like you have no idea where this man could have taken you. You're just like,
But what was I supposed to do? Let him follow
I know,
me to the room?
I know. Yeah, it's a lose situation. Like you there's
Come on in. Want to sit?
yeah. That's yeah. Oh, I don't.
I didn't know.
That's not good. But like after that terrible experience, how does it get better? What happens after that? Like, and also to go off the phone, you're supposed to buy your phone plan before you leave the country. That gives you access to like international data. Like whatever phone carrier you have, usually within the app, you could pay for like 1 month or 1 week or whatever of like international data. Usually it's most countries, but that's probably why your phone didn't work. Is you might not have bought the right plan possibly, because I've had that happen once, and I remember trying to fly to Spain, and I ended up in what was it, Switzerland, and I had some I had to take a bunch of different connecting flights. I had a flight that got canceled, and I ended up in Switzerland, and my phone wasn't working. It's a bunch of different language. I was like, I honestly didn't know where I was. So I was like, where the fuck am I? Like, times the phone's not working, but I just know I got to get to this gate at this time, and that was it. But it was just so weird. Just tried to find the most American thing. I found a Burger King, and like that was like the closest thing I could find. There's a bunch of random shit like everywhere. It was pretty, like seeing all the giant mountains. I would definitely want to go back to Switzerland at some point in my life, but I remember just like, what the hell? Like I definitely didn't have the right phone thing, because like I was like looking, I was like, that's not the time. This is the time that it was back home, but like it is middle of the day here. I'm like, what time is it? And it was just a very confusing experience. So I could actually relate to that. Um, Curious though about the actual retreat and how that went for you as well.
It was amazing. I loved it. So I told the retreat host Meg about all this, and she was like, Manders, first of all, you need to look up the conversion rates and all this, because I was like, I don't even know what I gave him for money. And it was a significant amount because we did not go far. But she's like, here's the deal. You're not taking a Gojek to come to the like resort where the retreat was at. I was like, she's like, I'm gonna have somebody get you. Like she sent a car. So that was chill. I made it to Soulshine. It was beautiful. Oh my God, that resort, they have everything there. Everything you could imagine. Like multiple restaurants, multiple pools right on site. And the staff there were so welcoming, so friendly. Like I mentioned off air how down the line my debit card got eaten. Even one of the staff, one of my last nights, I didn't have the money for food because I didn't have my card, and she's like, "Just Venmo me, I'll just take care of the tab." So I did, and like they were so sweet and so kind there. I loved the place, and the retreat itself was just. It was beautiful. It was magical. You know, we had our own yoga shala that we had sessions in each day. Each morning the retreat host would be up there. We could do different things with her. She'd do chanting, she'd do movement. We even did like shaking, like and just releasing, like you're standing up and just releasing whatever you have in you, like any stagnant energy, you know what I'm saying. We did yoga throughout different days. They had yoga offered. The retreat, the resort offered it every single morning if you wanted to attend it. We had different excursions we went to. We went to a beach one day. We went off-site shopping one day. We did a sound healing one day with the sound healing of Bali. Loved that. We did. She had different people come, and we had a photography session. We each did a photo shoot. Um, there were a lot of different things like that we did, and it was just magical.
Sounds like it's right up your alley and exactly what you needed to at that
Yeah.
point in your life. And this might be a tough question to answer, but like, what did you learn about yourself by going through that experience?
What did I learn about myself?
Besides not to give random guys on like little scooters tons of money. That might be a dead giveaway, but something else other than that.
Honestly, quite a few things, but even one of them being, you know, so in areas of my life, I have this such planning mentality mindset. Then again, when it comes to I got this opportunity that came out of the blue, and it's like all the planning went out the window. And it's like, man, you didn't even research Bali. Like, there's something called Bali belly, depending on certain food you eat. I had never even heard of that. And one of the women mentioned it on the retreat, and I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, Manda, if you type in Bali, it's like the third link that comes up anywhere. It really is. If you type in Bali, Bali belly is like a thing. And like stomach aches and like upset stomach from like the water, from different foods, from all this different thing. And I had no clue. So finding the balance between like not being the over planner, but also not planning like anything because neither is really the answer, you know? Like, I went to Podfest and I listened to different episodes people recorded. I don't even know who talking about Podfest. I spoke to people on Facebook. I posted almost every day in the Facebook group. Then I leave the country and I don't even Google the word Bali. So it's like finding that balance, not that I had to spend 6 hours a day researching, but like com- trying to combine the two, and realizing that sometimes I've had this either all plan or all spontaneous, and neither is really great. Is one of the big things.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great point. And we were kind of talking off air about this stuff too. And how I'm an over planner. I struggle with over planning. Like I need every detail of everything planned, and it's not healthy all the time. And I definitely struggle with that. But I think being willing to just go with certain things and allow things to happen at the same time, it's this balance of the way that we approach life is super important. And I think throughout life, this is kind of like a working concept for me that I've been kind of working with is that we're constantly pursuing balance, the highs and the lows, because you need both. There are certain moments where you need to experience the highs of the highs, and there's other moments where you're going to experience the lows and the lows, but those lows, the lows help you reach those highs again. And it's constantly going through those over and over to live a fulfilled life, to live a meaningful life. And you need those experiences to go through that. And when I was writing this book, one of the last chapters talks about kind of a spoiler alert, um, loss. And it's like the shocker of like the book basically. And because a lot of it's like positive things and things of that nature. But I think what helps create meaning or at least remind us what's meaningful can be something negative. And sometimes that negative thing shocks you into something more positive. And obviously, there's a bunch of different paths that you can go on with something like that. But you need the balance between the two, the yin and the yang. It's like the common thing that people talk about with the dark and the light. Like you need both perspectives. And when you're talking about over planning and being spontaneous, I think both of those, when worked correctly in balance, can create a lot of meaning and fulfillment in everyone's life. And I think that's a great thing to pull from your Bali experience, to actually put yourself like feet on the fire, just going for it. Because like not a lot of people have the courage to quit a job and then just go to a different country to experience something honestly kind of magical in the space that you're actually pursuing. Like not enough people are willing to take that risk, and you're going to look back on that experience and be super proud of yourself that you're willing to do that. When you look around, you probably look at people in your own life that have been doing the same thing for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years and would kill to do something that you just did. And I think that's such a powerful experience to talk about. And I'm glad that you were able to experience it and then also be able to share it on the podcast, because I think more people need to be inspired by stuff like that, where you're willing to take those risks, you're willing to do the thing and achieve something super monumental. And obviously, we're talking about what's coming up, and we'll probably get to that later in the podcast about Bali, maybe part two, essentially. But I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit as we've kind of gone through like the Bali experience and stuff like that. When we're looking at 2024 now, like what were some of the like kind of highlights? I guess obviously Bali is like a huge experience, but some of the things that you might have learned, like we're this whole episode is about reviewing 2024, and I'd like to kind of pick your brain of kind of how 2024 went in your eyes.
I think it was one of the most transformative years for me. Even like I mentioned about that setting the intention of the manifestation that I set. And honestly, I didn't even remember it. One of the other things I had on there was I traveled to multiple places I had never been before. And I did that too, even outside of Bali. Colorado, I went to Washington, D.C. and Maryland for podcast movement. I attended Podfest. And it's like, you know, setting the intention for what it is you're trying to, whether you want to call it manifest, achieve, accomplish, whatever word you want to use, but setting that intention, but also not being attached to that intention. Because every year I've had a different type of ritual some years that I've done, but I wasn't attached to this because I didn't even remember this January 11th thing that I did. And not all of there were things that did not come true. I have multiple things on there, but there were a few that did. And it's like I set them and I set what I was willing to do for it, what I was willing to let go of, like things I'd sell, like to make finances work for Bali, things I wouldn't purchase to make finances work, whatever it was. And I didn't hold on to it. I wasn't attached to it. I wasn't thinking about it. It wasn't, like I wasn't obsessed with it.
That's powerful. The detachment of things,
Yeah.
and like that makes me actually really think about the time period for me was that like 2021, 2022, maybe a little bit of 2020, where I was really doing TikTok stuff. And that's where honestly the concept of the book was really coming out. I was working with a life coach at that time. And this was before I was even on YouTube. Of I wanted to create merch and I wanted to get on YouTube. And I wanted, maybe still do, but like at the time I was like curious about life coaching and I was like trying to explore that path. But I was almost so obsessed and attached to like the outcome rather than just letting things be. And then like kind of going through life that I almost prevented those things from manifesting. Obviously, when you let those things go, eventually they can manifest. Boom, I have a book. I wrote a book. But like I had to let that go and then it came back. So it's like this weird thing is like you want something to happen or you want a certain outcome. Say I mean, I could even point to my relationship. I wanted a relationship so bad for so many years. Like that was like I always felt it was like the one thing that like I didn't have. And like when you're lacking something, you usually don't attract it. That's usually not how that works on top of it. But I was almost chasing the relationship. And it wasn't until I let go of the idea of a relationship and let go of honestly at that time creating sad boy TikToks, like I had to let that go. It was almost instantly I found my relationship. Almost instantly, as soon as I let it go and just stopped caring about that stuff, it came into my life. It was almost like the universe saying, "Yeah, finally, here you go." Like it's just like you can't obsess over everything that you want to happen in life because that's never how you're going to get it. Obviously, you can go into the mental motivational stuff about like Kobe Bryant obsessive and like really chasing your passions and stuff like that. But like when we're talking about manifestation or attracting things or law of attraction or the way the universe works in different ways, you really got to let things be. You got to set the intention, but you also have to let it be. And that's a very fine line between that. This is like the balance of things that we were just talking about, but it's such an interesting concept. And I think it's a really great thing to kind of take away from 2024 and some of the things that you've been learning. I'm curious about your podcast. How has the podcast grown for you specifically in the year 2024?
It's grown a lot. I released 90 episodes this year. I've got one more releasing next week, next Monday. But I started publishing the videos on YouTube. I started posting more clips, not as consistent as I wanted to be with that, but it's expanded so much for me. I went to two different podcasting conferences. I met so many other podcasters and just learned different ways I want to do things, different things. Like I did some solo episodes, but again, I wasn't set on them. Like I didn't have a set, I'm going to do a solo episode every single Friday, because I don't want to just release a solo episode talking out my ass. I had different topics that I wanted to say stuff on. Like, I did a just start one, I did a people pleasing one, but it's that same concept of like, I'm not releasing an episode just to release an episode for the hell of, like, especially a solo. Like, if I'm doing my regular interviews, you got your Mindset Monday with Manders every week with a guest. That's kind of like my slogan, but I'm not just gonna release a solo just to talk. Like, I could do that on social media. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, so that's the way it's changed a lot for me, and using my voice a lot more and asking guests more questions. I've added an intro, I've added an outro, I have ending segment questions I ask every guest, and just made it more mine. Like, people kind of know by now. There's these questions. Some of them love them, some of them hate them. That they were gonna get at the end of Manders Mindset. Yeah.
Same way I mean, I have a ending question that I always ask. I'm not going to ask you since it's like you're back on the podcast. I don't do that for the return guests, but like obviously you've been on the podcast, so like the experience and like the questions that I asked and like how you're going to pursue your passion and do it that way and have that whole question, and I have like my intro and how it's like my outro. It's like rehearsed a little bit. It's the same thing, but you find your way through podcasting and you learn through other people, which is important. Like there's definitely things that I've learned from different like podcasters, from friends that are podcasters, from the friends that just do content. Like you learn things from other people, but you also have to figure out how to do it your way. Like Manders Mindset is your podcast. Carroll Connection is my podcast. We might overlap in some of our talking points. We might agree on a lot of things, but our podcasts are ultimately different because we're different people, and that's good. Like, it's good to have platforms to highlight people in our lives, in our circles, on social media that do cool things. And podcast has given me like one of the most unique experiences that I never thought I was going to have, to be able to connect with people. Like, who knows if we ever even meet if we don't do podcasting? Like, who knows? Like, we don't know. Like, that's one of the interesting things that this type of like art allows, is all these different conversations. And like every year I always like to think back on like all the episodes that I've done in the year and like all the different people that I've had on, and especially this year where I was chasing 200 like a motherfucker. Like I was going crazy for that. Like I wanted 200. I wanted to get it around the 5-year anniversary. I was timing, I was a little off of my timing. I was trying to get 5 years on my birthday reflection, and I was like an episode off. Like I was close, but I put in a ton of effort this year in terms of just like booking guests, finding new guests, bringing back old guests. Like I was telling you off air, this is probably one of my more successful numbers years for like podcasting, and it was all in the pursuit of trying to reach episode 200. And I'm extremely like grateful for the opportunities to do podcasting. I know you could probably relate to a lot of that, is to have all these different conversations, and a lot of the stuff sometimes you don't even get to record. It's just stuff that you're just talking to your guest about, and you get to actually like catch up with them or talk to them and pick their brain on something. And those are the moments that you get to really appreciate, where you're being human. You're not worrying about content and stuff like that, and you're breaking down that wall, but at the same time you appreciate the actual chance to interview someone, to share their story and highlight them. And podcasting is a unique experience. It's definitely changed a lot since I've started, and I'm interested to see where it goes from here, because when I was like first really getting into it, it was audio. That's where I was. It was just audio. And I know you talked about getting on YouTube and stuff like that, and like even just that's such a daunting challenge, and you deserve a lot of credit for that, because it took me. I was on YouTube till episode like 83. Like it took me a long time to get on YouTube. Like
Really?
yeah,
I
83.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was audio strictly. Like I had a camera for
I had no idea about that.
yeah, I think it was episode
I
40.
hated that I didn't have videos for,
It
because
pisses me off that I didn't do it. Like I just
I was still recording the video, but I didn't know how to edit it the right way I wanted it, and yeah.
I regret it all. I mean, I just think back on my second episode with my late grandfather. I'm like, damn, I wish I had that. But it's like I have the audio. Like it's not like the end of the world, but it's still frustrating that it was so easy. I just didn't know. And like I mean, you don't know. You don't know how long you're gonna do it. If you told me back then I'd be doing podcasting in 2024 going into 2025, I'd be like, that's crazy. Like, what the fuck? Like, I couldn't even imagine where I am now back then. I wouldn't have thought that. I was also a little delusional. I thought I was gonna have like 1,000 followers in a year. Like I was like, I don't know why. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get 1,000 followers in 1 year on Instagram. Literally the hardest app. I still don't even have 1,000 followers on my podcast Instagram. Like, it's just I've learned over the years to not stress the numbers so much and appreciate the moments and celebrate the milestones because if you're constantly worrying about the next thing, like the next 100 episodes, next 200 episodes, next 5 years of podcasting, you're going to miss the moments. You don't want to miss the moments. The moments are what make your experience worth it in the end. When you look back on podcasting, there's probably bunch of handful of episodes that you're like, damn, those were really good episodes. When you walk away, you're like, I feel really great. Obviously, you feel good after episodes. Like for me, I've always said on the podcast, I feel euphoric almost after doing a podcast. And even doing today's episode, obviously, I was talking off air about kind of my struggles. It's lighting that fire again where I'm like feeling really good about this and I'm really enjoying our conversation. But it brings this like feeling where I'm like I really enjoy doing this. And I think about all those different episodes and I appreciate all those moments with people and like the fact that I've had all these different people be willing to sit across from me and do a podcast. And sometimes like people like yourself who do it multiple times. Like that like almost like reassures the stuff that I'm doing is like kind of worth something. Like might not be worth everything, but it's worth something. And I think that's to kind of tie it a little bit back to the book, even just creating meaning, like creating value, creating something that you enjoy, passion. And I think that's what kind of when I think about 2024, I think about the constant pursuit, the the challenges along the way, the growth through the year, there's difficult moments, the ups and the downs, but adding the building blocks, keep building the thing. And who knows where this goes? We never know. But I'm excited to see where things go. As we're getting towards the end, though, I do want to ask you kind of like future plans, like 2025. Like, what do you got planned up for the podcast, for breath work, for everything in between?
2025. Lots of plans. Still going to be releasing podcast episodes all of January, but we are taking a hiatus from February 4th to February 2nd to March 2nd because I'm heading back to Bali. That sound healing that I attended, I loved. And I'm getting trained in sound healing and certified. So I'm spending all of February in Bali. And when I was in Bali the last time, it was only about 2 weeks, but I did editing out there. And I'm like, I want to be fully present. Not that podcasting or editing or any of that makes me not fully present, but I just don't want to have anything else in my mind. I haven't taken a break at all yet from podcasting. And I'm like, I announced it in my final solo episode that we're taking a month off and it is what it is. So I'm heading back to Bali in February. I don't know what else is happening come 2025. Planning on offering more breathwork sessions. I offered a lot more this past year. I started doing it virtually. I offered it at a Salt Cave Island Wellness. I offered it at 2 retreats this past year. So more breathwork sessions, possibly some sound healing sessions. I'm not too sure yet. But yeah, seeing where things flow. I'm mainly looking at the early side of 2025, especially with the month long trip to Bali. But yeah,
That's super exciting. And I'm very interested to see what comes from it. I think a lot of things can be birthed from an experience like that, especially for that long. I think you're doing it the right way. I think you're taking your time, and I agree 100% of taking the break from podcasting to be fully present in the stuff. Like, as much as I would have liked to be recording the last several weeks and I had guests and I would have loved to bring great content, I know those people's stories would have been really great for the platform and for their people in their lives, but to be present during the holidays, to not worry about content, to not worry about like an episode going out like the last several weeks. was nice. Like, it was nice to take a break. I'm excited for 2025. I'm going to keep trying to pop out episodes when I can, and I have almost the first quarter lined up with potential guests, and like kind of like you said, we'll see what happens. And I have a one thing I'm excited for is I got a trip in June to go to Portugal, the Azores, my family and stuff. So
That's awesome.
we didn't go international last year, but we're gonna go international this year, and excited for that. And I'll probably do a little fall trip with my girlfriend. Try to do that once a year. But yeah, just really excited to see what comes from 2025. I think there's a lot of potential there. Um, I think it's another year of just kind of going with the process of like the foundation that I've laid. At the same time, like being patient with what comes next, being open to it, kind of even similar to kind of what you're talking about, being focused on like that first half, that first quarter almost, and seeing what comes from that. Because opportunities are going to come out of nowhere. We have no idea what's going to happen. Every year brings new challenges and new things to be excited about. And I didn't know last year that I was going to have a book published. I had ideas, didn't know I was going to actually write it. So who knows what 2025 is going to bring, but excited to bring that. And I want to give you kind of like the last word uh, on the podcast here for the 2024 year in review episode. There's no question specific. I'm going to let you kind of leave it where you want to leave it. If you want to go on a little rant, you want to keep it short, whatever you feel is perfect to kind of tie the bow on this. You're the Manders Mindset. I got to let you kind of wrap up this episode, and then we'll shout out the people and plug all stuff and all that good shit. So.
Okay. I guess I'll share one other lesson I learned from 2024, and might sound a little morbid, but when you were talking about moments, it kind of resonated with me. But something I had heard before is everybody in your life will have a last day with you, and you don't necessarily know when that's going to be. And I lost two people this past year in ways I never expected to. And, just really say what you got to say. I lost my cousin in October, and she was super young. She was 31. I never would have expected to lose her. But one thing that gives me a little bit of peace is I told her every single year on her father's anniversary how she inspired me. Why that day, I don't necessarily know, but I would send her a text letting her know I was thinking of her and that she inspired me. He was proud of her. I was proud of her. And she's one of the few people in my life that I actually feel comfort knowing that she's passed and I don't feel anything left unsaid. So, like, say what you got to say because you never know when that day's going to come. Nobody's going to live forever. So, and I don't mean to take this like too morbidly, but just embrace the moments, embrace the people, because like that's how you create, in my eyes, a really meaningful life. Looking back, like I don't have regrets with my cousin Kay. I don't have regrets with my other friend that I lost. Because I always told him even the little things like that I appreciated. Even at times I was like, should I say this extra thing? And I'm like, man, to just say it. Like, who cares if he's like, why is she being so friendly? Who cares? Life's short. And you don't know when that last day is going to be.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap up the year in review episode because as we enter a new year, there is going to be moments where people may lose friends or family, unfortunately, in their life, and um, I don't think people say enough what they mean and what they want to say, and being more honest with those people in your life and letting them know that you care, or even if it's as simple as wishing that person a happy birthday text that you might have missed the last couple of years and they're really close friend or family member, reach out to them, say something, like at least extend that thing. It might be something so simple as a text, but you never know what could help someone, what could inspire someone. Even if you're seeing someone post something on Instagram that's motivation or cool, like that's how I started originally with like content, was just seeing someone do something cool and just like, hey, I think that's really cool. Like just let them know it's cool. Like little stuff like that goes a long way with people, and leaving things like not like I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but don't leave things unsaid. Like say the thing, mean the thing, and be about it for 2025. I think we have enough passive aggressive on the internet. We should be a little bit more real with each other, and um, podcasting gives us the opportunity to do that. And again, Amanda, appreciate you for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience for 2024 and since the last episode, and um, being a part of the Carroll Connection. I appreciate this and just being able to kind of like bounce ideas even in the pre-show. It's always nice to have someone who does a podcast, understands a little bit of the struggle, and just to connect. Like, I just appreciate that. If you want, look into this camera over here, shout out where the people can find you and all that great stuff.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You can find me social media, Instagram, TikTok, The Breathing Goddess. Instagram's also Manders Mindset. You can listen to Manders Mindset, find it on YouTube if you want to watch it, and connect with me.
Again, thank you for coming on the podcast again. And I look forward to the next time as well.
Me too.
For you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. Check it out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll at the Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up, as well as check out the 5 Pillars to Creating a Meaningful Life, available on Amazon and only Amazon. Buy it, read it, write your review. And that's all I got to say. Until next time, guys. Peace.